Thank you very much. Let me introduce now Guilherme Bravo, Vice President of Abengoa, that is going to explain the experience in renewables, energy generation, and bioenergy. Guilherme, please.
Thank you, Maria. And let me start. Well, let me explain a little bit about Abengoa. Abengoa is a listed company in Madrid and in NASDAQ in the States. We are a $10 billion US turnover company, 24 billion of assets, and close to 30,000 people working around the world. No? Well, Abengoa is a company that is focused in provide innovative technology solution for sustainability in the energy sector and the environment sector. We work in three main business models. The first one is engineering and construction. We have all the capabilities and incredible track record. Second one is concession, and in this we develop our own projects. And now we have built a new company that is Abengoa Yield that has part of our assets and is listed in the NASDAQ too. And in the third position is the industrial production, mainly biofuels, because in this sector we take risk demand, not at the same time that in concession that the risk demand is very, very slow. No? Well, in this business model, for us, technology and innovation are the basis for the competitive advantage. And this is very important in our company. The technology development has given us the possibility to have new advantage in engineering and construction. And with the operation of the plant that we have built, we learn and we retrofit to the R&D department all that is needed to improve the performance and to reduce cost. And this is part of our secret. We are working right now in energy generation, mainly renewable. We have a big track record in all kinds of renewable. I will focus more in thermosolar and in biofuel, but we have covered wind since the beginning. The first wind power plant in Spain, Tarifa, was built by us. We have covered all kinds of solar, PV, thermosolar. We are in biomass. We are experienced in all kinds of renewable. Clean conventional generation. This is other way that we are working very, very, very important in an important way, mainly in combined cycle. And third, biofuels. We have a strong position in transmission line. We are the most important company worldwide in transmission line. And in water, we are the same strategy, is to be part of the world, in the water treatment world and the transmission. And we are in the rest of infrastructure, could be electrical installation. We have a strong position around the world in more than 40 countries. And before to start to talking about solar thermal energy, let me explain a little bit about the role of the European Union in our company. That is an example how it's working the European Union in renewable. For us, as Mr. Ristori has told us before, European Union has been very, very, very important in the three issues that he comments. No? The first one is the R&D. R&D is the support of the European Union R&D has been very, very important for us. And it's very important right now and could be very important in the future. The second one is how the legal framework and the policies that the European Union has established has allowed to develop the renewable market. Without this, what has been impossible. And the third one is the financial support. No? And I want to point out the role of the European Investment Bank that has been very, very important in all renewable, in Europe and abroad Europe. Well, in our R&D strategy, for us it's very important to work in innovation. We are working in how to increase the performance of our plants, how to reduce our cost. But in R&D, we are working in three main issues. First is how we have to provide a very flexible operational plants. And the second is the energy that we have to provide has to be dispatchable. And the third one is integration. How we can integrate different sources of energy in the same facility, for one side. The second one is how we can integrate those renewables into the grid. And the third one is how we can integrate systems between them with this transmission line. Well, in solar thermal energy, for us, this is parabolic trough. It's the first technology. It's a more mature technology. We are working right now. We have a huge experience. We have working right now in how to increase the performance of the plant because the technology is developed, and we have huge experience around the world. And we have added storage. Thermal solar is the only technology that so far allow us to store the energy. Could be hydro, but hydro has other circumstances. No? In this sense, we have developed from the beginning supersaturated power. Now we are working with molten salt, and we have developed at the beginning in Spain parabolic trough plants in the Spanish solar plant. We have developed over here in Abu Dhabi, and we are very proud the partnership that we have developed over here with Masdar about the most important parabolic trough plant in the Gulf, that is SAMS 1, that is running very, very well. And this technology that we have developed in Europe has allowed us to go to the States and to develop the most important plant in the world in parabolic trough that has 6 hours of storage. It's in Phoenix, in Arizona, and allow us to cover from during the whole day till midnight. This is very important advance. Well, talking about tower technology, we do believe that tower technology has a huge future. Needs to develop, but has a huge future. Why? Because we can work with a very, very high temperature that allows us to work in high pressure condition. And for this, we have developed, we began with 10 megawatt plants, now with 20. In the current plant that we are developing in South Africa, we are in 50. And we are beginning the construction of a new plant in Chile, about 110. And this technology allows us to reduce the water consumption because we have design of tower that allow us to use the tower as a dry cooling system. That means that the consumption of water is close to zero. In this, we have experiences around the world. Of course, we began in Spain, but we are right now developing projects in South Africa, in Chile, and this is very important, the Chilean project, because we have integrated not only tower plus storage, we have integrated solar plus storage plus PV. And with this plant allow us to provide 24/7 solar energy. This is, I think, a very, very important advance. No? And of course, to work in PV. PV has reduced the cost incredible, and we are working how to increase the performance of the plant too. No? But not only to think that renewable are alone, and this is a different world. We think that we can integrate renewable with conventional, and we have a sample of this. We have developed hybrid plants, the first one in Algeria, the second one in Morocco, and the third one in Mexico, all of them financed by World Bank, that allow us to obtaining between 10 and 20% of the plant by solar. And this is takes some advantages. First of one is that this allows to the countries to begin to manage renewable, and the same thing that are managing conventional energy. And this is quite important. Last but not least, I want to talk a little bit about biofuels and how is our experience in biofuels. No? Well, as we are focusing energy, we take care of electricity and biofuels. Well, in this slide I try to show how important is R&D and which is the process in order to deploy and technology. For example, this is the sample in second generation. No? We began 10 years ago to develop the concept. We developed the pilot plant. We built the pilot plant. We operate the pilot plant. With those results, we developed a demonstration plant, semi-industrial scale. And later on, in the States, and this is other big experience that we have in bioenergy, that is not only work in the European Union, is to join people from the European Union and the States working together. And this has been enormous success. And with the support of the Department of Energy of the state, we have developed the first industrial plant, just the commercial operator date has been in last October. Well, 10 years, a lot of money. We have invested more than $600 million US. We have obtained some grants from the US Department of Energy. A lot of work has been done in the demonstration scale and the pilot plant. And at the end, we have a new commercial technology in operation. But with this technology development, we have changed our mentality and how we have been focused this business model for years. No? At the beginning, we were focusing only to provide bioethanol, a little bit in biofuels, but mainly bioethanol. Now, with the technological development that we have made, we changed the mentality because with the technology that we have developed, with the plant that we are operating right now, 3,000 million liters per day, and with the capability that we have developed internally in our company, we have modified, and now we are prepared to provide a multi-bioproduct platform. Not only fuels, biofuels, we can provide biochemicals, we can provide bioplastic, and we can provide power. And in this process, that's allowed us to provide and to have in operation the second generation biofuels technology. We develop our own enzymatic process, we develop our own enzymes, and in this sense, we have the whole support of the European Union in this role. No? And at the end, other possibility is to use this technology in order to solve the problem of the municipal solid waste. Because at the end, this we can use as a feedstock, and we can produce biofuels from the organic part of the municipal waste. This is other big possibility that we have developed. Well, we have a huge experience in bioethanol. This is the last one that we have in the state. And biomass. Only a few words about this. We have biomass is other source that of renewable that we are working with. And we have a track record in this, and last November, we have get an agreement in order to develop a new plant, 200 megawatts in Ghent, in Belgium. No? Well, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guillermo. Now we will have Stefan Fintelman, CEO of the KBB Solar, that is going to present the solar heating and cooling innovative applications for global needs. Please.
Thank you, Maria. Yes, just a word to my company. KBB is an OEM supplier of solar collectors to the heating industry and system integrators. Today I am speaking in behalf of ESTIF, the European Solar Thermal Industry Federation, the European Association. If people talk about energy, mainly in Germany, they have in mind electricity. So energy is equal to electricity. This is not correct. It's not making sense. Of all consumption in Europe, of all energy consumption, only 25% is used for electricity. So there's quite so much missing. Nobody would talk about transport, for example, and using the word energy and having in mind transport. Transport is as well 25% of energy consumption. So there's a big part missing, 50%. 50% of all energy and energy use is used for heating, mainly for heating and for cooling. So don't forget about this big sector, especially if you think about becoming independent from Russian gas, as we have it this winter in Europe, the discussion. Russian gas isn't used to produce electricity, it's used to heat our homes and to produce heat for industrial purposes. Solar thermal is the most effective method to convert sunlight into heat, economically and technically. But I brought some slides and I start now with my presentation. The development of solar thermal is a success story, mainly outside of Europe, but it tripled over the last 10 years. You see, worldwide, it's 326 gigawatt installed. Compared to other renewable technologies, it's the second source after wind and about twice as much energy produced by solar thermal than by PV, but only 10% in Europe. The biggest place or the biggest installation of solar thermal is in China. Just a quick introduction into the different technologies of solar thermal. Mr. Ridolfi just talked about concentrating solar power up here. The technologies we have on this scale, and this is the temperature level you're operating the system. So starting with the most simple system, an unglazed collector for pool heating, then flat plate collectors, vacuum tube collectors, and concentrating solar power normally tracked. You couldn't say that a vacuum tube collector is more efficient than an unglazed collector. That's not true. You have to look where you use the energy at what temperature level. On the temperature level of pool heating, the unglazed collector is much more efficient than a vacuum collector or even a flat plate collector. Now I'm going to show some impressive examples of big installations worldwide done by European companies, starting with the biggest solar thermal system worldwide. It's in the Atacama Desert in Chile. It's providing the copper mine. The refining process needs a bath temperature of 48 degrees, and more than 80% of the needed heat is covered by the system, which, for my opinion, is very impressive. Okay. The next sample I got is over here in Abu Dhabi. It's the Sheikh Zayed Desert Learning Center. It's a solar cooling installation, 1,500 square meter, 352 kilowatt peak, and again, very impressive, 83% of the needed heat is covered by the solar thermal system. This is only possible because every solar system installed is combined with a tank. So you have always solar thermal combined with a storage. Please have this in mind if you calculate a system. If you compare it to photovoltaic or to wind energy, this is always without storage, and you will have quite some problems if you have a system running without storage. We made this experience in Germany. This system is replicable in large non-residential buildings all over the world, and it's a flagship sustainability building in the Emirates designed to minimize water consumption. The efficiency of the solar system in this case is very high. It's nearly 900 kilowatt hours per square meter per year solar gain. This is another sample in this region in Saudi Arabia, the Princess Noura University for Women in Riyadh. 25 megawatt peak district heating for hot water and heating, serving about 40,000 students. This is a very special system with a Fresnel collector. Fresnel collector is not so common, it's more at the beginning. It's interesting because you can have the concentrated solar light and you can have working temperatures up to 200 degrees. This system is working at about 200 degrees. Solar cooling and absorption chiller, 700 kilowatt installed capacity, and it's the largest Fresnel collector field in the Middle East, which is quite easy because I think there are not so many. But anyway, it's an impressive system. Now we are going to Singapore. Again, a school or a college. Installed capacity 2.7 megawatts, so a smaller system, completely roof integrated, so it doesn't consume any land space. Up here you see the collectors. This project is replicated in Phoenix, Arizona, where the world's biggest solar thermal cooling installation is installed. I think last year in 2013 or 2014 it started operation. 2,900 students served. Again, in a solar cooling system with Fresnel collectors in South Africa, 272 kilowatt peak, a roof installation, and it could be replicated on residential buildings with cooling demand. This is a quite aesthetic roof integration in a bank building. It's the Caixa Geral de Depósitos in Portugal. The collectors are completely integrated in the blue roof. 23 megawatt installed capacity, highly replicable in large buildings with similar solar irradiation areas. It's used completely for the HVAC system, for 5,000 people, for hot water, for heating and for cooling purposes. And it's Europe's largest solar cooling system for an office complex. No, probably not the most aesthetic system, but a very efficient one. It's one of the Danish systems built in Denmark. I think there are about 37 systems like this in Denmark. These systems have an installed capacity of 23 megawatts, supplying 1,460 consumers, 100% with renewable energy. You have about 55% is done by solar in a country like Denmark, where you have long winter, cold winter, gray weather, and sunny summers. It's only possible because you combine solar thermal with a seasonal storage. I think it's this thing in the back. You have a big seasonal storage, and they combine it with wind energy and biomass for 100% renewable energy source. This could be replicated more or less all over Europe. I would say more or less all over the world. Now let me say a few words to the systems. It's more that I talked about the installation. For these systems, you mainly use large-scale collectors, make it big. This collector has 12.5 square meter or 9.3 kilowatt peak hour. At the operation point, it has an efficiency of about 50%. So 50% of the energy you get by sunlight, it's converted to heat. There's hardly any technology with this high conversion factor. You install them quite fast, normally with a team of 4 workers. They can set up 350 to 700 kilowatt peak per day. You have normally a big crane, have the mounting system installed, and then you have 2 collectors per tour, so 25 square meter, and in the end, it looks like this. So in the end, you have between 0.5 and 1 megawatt installed by a team of 4 people, so it can be done very efficient. If you are planning new resorts, new villages, or bigger industrial complexes where there is a heat demand, don't forget about solar thermal. It's a very efficient method, and it's a proven technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have now 2 talks that show us success stories, but in third countries. So I will present Mr. Eric Scotto, that is CEO of Aku Energy, that will explain how to integrate renewable energy in small island states. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I could have come here to talk about my company, but it's not going to be the purpose today. even if Aco Energy, you might not know this small, tiny French company, we are developing, financing, building, and operating renewable energy project in the world. But I'm here to talk, maybe we're going to have the slides, or please. Thank you. So I came here to, first of all, to give you a big message of hope for this planet. Because as Claude was saying earlier today, climate change could be a real driver for renewable energy. And that's exactly what I'm going to try to illustrate in a minute. I came here also to thank the European Commission for the legal framework, for all the efforts that has been achieved in the last 10 years in Europe. And as Dominique Ristori was saying this morning, we are very proud to be European today. Why? Because all the efforts we have done in Europe were for the benefit, of course, of European countries. But they're going to have a massive impact, positive impact today in all the other countries in the world. So I'm going to tell you a story about one of my favorite islands in the world, which is located in the Indian Ocean. It's called Île de la Réunion, Réunion Island. When we arrived there, we've been facing several problems. The first problem you are facing when you are in a small island state or in an even bigger island is the land. Are you going to be competing on the few portion of land you have for agriculture to install renewable energy? There were some people when we arrived, they were doing that, but we stopped a little bit and we thought about, we've been thinking about what will be the future of this island if 100% of the land is dedicated to renewable energy. What will we do for food, to grow food? And the idea we had at that time, and we called that the first generation, and it was 8 years ago, was to share the land between agriculture and photovoltaic. Why we've done that? It's because of the pressure, the lack of land, the lack of space in those islands. The price of land is always growing, and there is speculation on land. So the idea we had was to rent a land and to split the land into agriculture and photovoltaic, and to give for free half of the land to farmers. Why? Because in this island, there is 800,000 people. Soon, there will be 1 million. And the farmers, they don't have even access to land anymore because of the price of the land, because of the competition of the land for building and for industrial activities. So that was the first version, and we created that first project, which is a 50-50. So the way it works, we are growing in the middle, value-added crops, and the one in the middle is very important. It's called the geranium, and this is ancestral. This is a very old culture in Réunion, which was disappearing because the farmers, they didn't have the money to compete against other activities to grow geranium. So what I'm showing you here is a new model. It's a new model to finance not only renewable energy, but to finance agriculture. Why? Because thanks to the feed-in contracts, the long-term view we have in energy, what we choose to do is to reduce our immediate profits to finance agriculture in order to have a long-term view. Because I can go to, there is one of my favorite banker in the room, I can go to see him and say, okay, lend me the money for 18 years. And because I know my revenue, so I will be able to reimburse you. But the farmers, they cannot do that anymore, especially in islands like that, because they are fragile because of the climate change. There is more and more cyclone in those islands. So it's very difficult to get financed by banks to grow, to develop agriculture. So in the same time, we started to develop a new photovoltaic concept and a new concept to finance agriculture. We are not philanthropists. We are in some case with our foundation, but here it's not a philanthropist concept. It's a long-term view concept. It's a 50 years, 100 years long concept. We need to live together. What will we do with energy if we don't have food? So the idea was to mix those two activities on the land. But it's still a problem with this model, because we are using 50% of the land to produce energy, while we could be producing food. So we had another idea 6 years ago, and that's what we call the second generation. There was another problem on those islands. Because of the cyclone, the hurricane in some other region, you got more and more problem to have the activity, the agricultural activity running all year long. So the idea we had was to build anti-cyclonic greenhouses. So those greenhouses, they have two effects. Now it's not 50% PV, 50% agriculture on the land. It's 100% agriculture on the land and 50% PV on the roof, with a special design. And those greenhouses, they resist to cyclone. I'm able to tell you that you cannot say that until you've been in the middle of a cyclone. So until then, you pray that your engineers did the right calculation for the greenhouses. And suddenly, when you got a real cyclone like we had last year, which was supposed to be one of the cyclones you get every 50 years, then you see that you made the right choice, because 2 days later, 80% of the culture of the crops in Réunion Island were destroyed. We haven't made one declaration for insurance in our greenhouses. None, absolutely none declaration for insurance. So that was the concept works, and we demonstrated it. That's another type of crops you can grow. Of course, we did flowers. We are doing organic food. And there is another advantage. We wanted to prove that organic food is not more expensive than extensive food. It is most of the time more expensive because of the concept of financing agriculture. Here, the goal was to deliver organic food to schools. Why did we make it? It's because we are financing the farmer business thanks to the long-term view on energy, and he has no debt, so he's able to produce at the right price and deliver to the school. So what I'm saying here is, thanks to the renewable energy, we are developing, creating, innovating in a new concept of financing. So that was the second generation. Then, what happens in Réunion? We reached the 37% renewable energy barrier. 6 years ago, the grid operator was telling us we will not be able to put more than 20% of renewable in this grid. It's too fragile, we'll not make it. It's true, they were true. It's difficult, but as some of the people were saying this morning, we have to think about the new model. The grid system has been designed for a model of centralized production, centralized distribution in Europe. This model doesn't work for those countries, those islands. So the evolution, and one more time, thanks to the legal framework on the tender that has been issued in France, we talk with the grid operator, and the idea was that after 37% renewable energy, if we wanted to add more renewable energy on the grid, we needed storage. And storage not to produce during the night, that's not the point. Storage to change, to transform renewable energy in a baseload system. And you see on the graphic, the goal and the challenge was to call the grid operator the day before at 5 o'clock and to tell them the prediction, thanks to the prediction in meteorological prediction, to tell them what will be the quantity of energy I will be producing from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock tomorrow. And what is it? It's a plateau. How do we do that? It's very simple. Réunion is equipped of the largest solar storage system in the world. It's PV to produce the energy, and it's lithium-ion batteries to store the energy. And how does it work? When you have the clouds coming, if you have 40%, 50% renewable energy on the grid and massively solar, that will impact the production immediately. So thanks to the batteries, we are able to produce a plateau. And it looks like this. This is another impact of renewable energy in Réunion. We did that. This one is a 9 megawatt PV, 9 megawatt storage solar project in a jail. So that's another social impact of we are bringing thanks to the renewable energy project, which is training people, giving them a second chance to have jobs in the future on the island. Why? Because as a renewable energy operator, what we need also is a long-term view and be sure to be paid in the future. So if you have social problem, if you have social impacts on the region, this is creating a risk for your future cash flow. So the idea is really, thanks to the renewable energy, thanks to our activity, also to support local community and to support new social system on this island. Last but not least, intermittency, so PV, thanks to storage, you can also transform the PV in base load system. We developed, one more time, thanks to EU, because there were the NER 300 last year, and we responded to that grant, and we've been awarded 72 million euro to the first project, the offshore project, which is called Nemo. Nemo is a very old story. For the one which have been reading Jules Verne, 20,000, everybody knows it? 20 000 lieues sous les mers in French. He was already talking about that. It's a very simple system. We are pumping the water at 1,000 meters. Thanks to the difference of temperature at the surface, 28 degrees, we're using that difference of temperature to steam a working fleet. So we have two options. We have the offshore one, Nemo, and we have the onshore one, which is called Nautilus. And this is going to be installed in Martinique, in the Caribbean. So it's not in La Réunion, it's in the Caribbean. And there is a massive hope because we can install this type of solutions in many places in the world, especially islands. And as you know, islands are the more fragile lands because of the climate change. So thanks to that, you're doing base load system. So the two systems, the offshore on the right, the left one is even better because the water, the cool water we have on the ground, will be using also that cool water because just by side the infrastructure, there is a thermal plant. So we will be also using the very hot water of the thermal plant, and we will add 7 more megawatts. So the first one is a 10 megawatts product, and the second one is a 7 megawatt product. So I'm going to finish with that, a conclusion. Thanks to the legal framework that has been in place in the last 10 years, we've been able to develop very pragmatic projects in some of the islands which are part of the European Union. And thanks to that, we are going to export, we are going to transfer that knowledge to many countries in the world, on many islands. And I'm going to announce you a scoop or something which is important. On the 11th of February, I will be signing a 560 megawatts deal with the Indonesian government. So the Indonesian, what they've done, they came to Réunion, they look at what we've done, and they said, okay, we have 3,000 Réunion in Indonesia. We need 37,000 megawatts by 2022. It's tomorrow, 37,000. What do? Do we burn oil? Are we accelerating the climate change, or do we go to solutions like that? So that's exactly what we are proposing today to those people. And it's about 700 million people living on islands in this area close to the equator where we can put in place those solutions. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, we have Robert Ridolfi, Director of Sustainable Growth and Development from the DG Development and Cooperation of European Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. It's late, and you are tired. It was a very long afternoon, very, very interesting. I must say, I'm particularly impressed by the last presentation, which introduced somehow my. But before I start, I have to resolve any doubt. I am the only one, Roberto Ridolfi, here. There are no others. I can tell you about that. And this is the only speech I will deliver to you. We talk about poverty. I'm here as a fighter of poverty, as a warrior, with a lot of defeats, very, very few successes in my history, 25 years around. I've been ambassador of the European Union. I had the honor to be ambassador of the European Union in the Pacific, talking about small island countries. When I landed there in 2005, I said we should eliminate the different sectors that we were using there for our cooperation, education, transport, health, buildings, and do only one thing, energy, renewable energy and protection of the ocean, which is a good for humanity and a very important one, that ocean. So we started a so-called blue-green strategy. I'm very happy to tell you that this is continuing. And the blue-green strategy started from a very, very simple fact that Claude, our good friend from the European Parliament, explained. The dynamic of the economy changes. In a small island country, diesel to run a generator is very, very expensive. So your best option, even at that time, even at the different prices of solar panels, was renewable. And of course, along the equator, wind is not very much. So you need to go into other forms of renewable. That is a date, 2005. 2007, 2008, I was back to Brussels in charge of the energy unit, and I met that gentleman there who was pushing through the European Parliament. So political people can be inspirational and can have vision that then technocrats, good engineers, economists pursue. So Claude said, we have to do a fund for renewable energy and energy efficiency. And I was the victim, because in the European Commission, nobody wanted to take that one. as a matter of fact, I went to the legal service in 2008 and I told them, we want to do a fund of fund, a SICAV in Luxembourg called JRF. And they say, what? You cannot do it. And I say, well, in the financial regulation it's not written that we cannot do it, so we can do it. And the lawyers say, no, 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 we have never done it, so you can't do it. Well, I'm happy to inform you that last year, JRF, Global Energy Efficiency Renewable Energy Fund, set by vision of that gentleman and by me, working on it 1 year with the European Investment Fund, has won a Bloomberg Prize as one of the best fund of funds on renewable energy in New York. Why? Because the public side decided to put capital alongside the private, and last year we got about 85 million of private capital invested into that, saying that we can have a higher share of the risk in that operation. So we have done a lot of investments, and the ratio between €1 of a taxpayer of the European Union into that fund and the euros invested in renewable energy and energy efficiency is 32. So this is a very astonishing result of our leverage effect. 2008, we also started the blending facilities in the European Commission. That is, blend grants with loans, offering shield to investments that will never take place without a little bit of grant or without a little bit of covering of the risk. Because we deal with poverty in very difficult countries, very risky. And you private people, you don't want to go and risk in a place where there are very many uncertainties. So we come in 2008 and we say, let's do blending facilities. And again, we set up this blending system by which the European Commission gives money towards loans by development banks, but also private banks and equity investors in order to protect, but also amplify the magnitude and the impact of the grants that we have from taxpayers under a policy objective. In this case, development. But why development is so close to energy? 2012, Agenda for Change. Another gentleman, very, very accustomed with energy matter, called Andris Piebalgs, that was energy commissioner, then became development commissioner. And the gentleman said, we need to give a shift to the development policy. It was not only him, you know, history and good ideas, they go in groups. So in 2012, we get out this agenda for change for development. Well before the Sustainable Development Goals that are happening, just to reinforce the message of our Director General Ristori that says we must be proud to be European because we are avant-garde in policy, in technology, and also in conceiving systems to assist what naturally does not come alone. At that time, the Agenda for Change said, in development, we need two things, energy and agriculture. And what kind of energy are we talking about? We are talking about access to energy, because this is a shame. I would like to ask to switch off all the lights in this room now. And just 10 seconds, and I would like to ask you, how do you feel just in the dark, only for 10 seconds, and then project them 360 days a year, about 7, 6, 8 hours a day, every day of your life. No energy. And you know, interventions in that field in the past have been just, as I call it, putting light on poverty. So our intervention was just to give light to poverty, and that's not proper. We have to give energy against poverty, because without energy, we can't do agriculture, we can't do business, we can't do economic development, we can't do anything. And proper energy, modern source of energy, not just energy. And that's where we started then looking at access to energy as an obsession. And I can tell you it's become my obsession, because we still finance a lot of good projects with private and public I can mention a project of 315 megawatt on the plateau of Lake Turkana in Kenya, on a wind project. This was generated by an investor just pulling out 35 million, calling a couple of bankers, pulling out big bankers, and then at the end coming to the Commission and say, with all good efforts, we reached 600 million, but we need another 25. And then we put that little difference, so the project materialized for 315 megawatt, which is 15% of the total installed capacity will be in Kenya. This is an example, but this is a big example, and big examples, in a certain way, big projects go faster and better than small projects. But for access to energy in rural Africa, you need 1,000, 5,000 small mini-grid that later on, like the picture that was shown, with all these multipolar installations in Germany. The same I would like to dream about Africa. And we need to do that. So we need 5,000, 10,000 small installations of 20, 50, 100. And by doing that, later on, we will connect them all in a network, as we are skillful in the European Union with smart grids and so forth. So let me conclude. The European Union intends to link this process into the development agenda together with the process of the climate change. Do you think a climate change is hitting Norway? Now, I apologize with my friends from Norway. This is a beautiful country. But climate change is doing good to agriculture in Norway. Climate change is doing very bad to agriculture in Africa. It's generating catastrophes. It's increasing the frequency and the intensity of natural catastrophes. Climate change is a prerequisite for development as energy. So preventing climate change, obviously. So we need to go in parallel. And this year will be a fundamental year in this path. And somebody said climate change debate and policy will demonstrate the opportunity for renewable energy. I would say renewable energy is demonstrating the necessity of climate change as an economic factor in our postmodern economic theory. In my view, and that's what we are doing, we are linking policy change in the energy sector to more investment in order to reach each and every person on the planet with a full universal access to modern and reliable source of energy. We need to commit ourselves to do this kind of step, visionary on the policy, engaging on the political landscape, investing and facing risks, which the public sector has the obligation to take the biggest share of it, obviously, but at the same time, moving towards it. Aside from this, can I say, philanthropic vision of development, we have to abandon that. We have done for many, many years energy access through NGOs. This is nice and good, but it doesn't last long. Sustainability is the key answer. I much prefer a business-oriented man like the people sitting in front of you here, being in charge not only of a cheap buyer of a solar panel, but the maintenance of it, the delivering of it to the people, the cashing of the tariffs, and so forth. Because that will become an actor for development in its own merit. If I develop a project for 2,000 people, the private operator will have all interest to extend the client base from 2,000 to 5,000, which is, for me, development. From 2,000 to 5,000, I have increased the access to energy. And for the business person, it's business. So this is a win-win. For doing that, we need policy, and that's where we negotiate. We put our weight as European Union with our delegations. Being an ambassador, I know the power of a political dialogue with the leaders. And that is where I think we come together, and we come in this room as private people, as institutions, as bankers, playing the same game all together. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much. We have time for 1 or 2 questions before we conclude. No questions. Paula, please.
Thank you very much. I would have just a question, not a question, a request to Eric Scotto. Could you elaborate a little bit on the financing of this project in La Réunion?
Is there any more question? There is there.
Can I inquire this?
Yes.
The question on the small island again. From a technical point of view, there is a lot of talk about the fact that the electrical renewables are not so programmable. So do you see the need for something like CSP, which is dispatchable, as was mentioned before in Abengoa's presentation? Is it too complicated to implement? Is it an interesting possibility based on the experience you had in a closed system like small islands?
Thank you. There was a question of Claude? No? So, who wants to answer to, I think?
I can.
Yeah, the small island state. Yeah.
Does it work? Yeah. First of all, for the financing. Until the crisis, at the beginning of the project, where let's say 8 years ago until 5 years ago in La Réunion, we could easily find financing. Why? Because it was in the legal framework of the feed-in tariff we had in France. So we had that 20 years contract signed with EDF. So it was not difficult at that time to go to see a bank, put 20% equity and 80% debt, until we've been able to demonstrate that our structure were solid enough to resist to anticyclonic situation. But that was until 2008, 2009. Then there was a lot, the banks in a small territory like that, there was few banks, 2, 3 banks. They've been financing a lot of projects. So they're starting to be scared about the risk because too much financing in a small territory. Imagine if you have a major hurricane, they were starting to be scared. So nobody wanted, the banks, they were starting to stop to finance projects. And for the first time, we had to call AFD, the French state bank, supported by the government. And normally, AFD is never investing in France. AFD, the role of AFD is to support government, foreign government, for development. But they considered that was a special situation because we were not finding financing. And that there was no my friend sitting close to me at that time able to support us. So AFD came and started to finance again with us a new project. And now the private sector is back on the ground, and we are financing again. I don't know if your question was addressed to me concerning maybe potential other islands like the Pacific islands, like Indonesia and so on. That would be more difficult to finance in those places because it's new. Sometimes there is no legal framework, and we have to find a new system to finance those countries, and we might need support from people like you in those cases.
So can I ask Robert to complete the answer to this question?
Yeah, thank you. In fact, we are elaborating, and it's almost ready, after 6 months of consultation with the sector, the private sector doing rural electrification, and after 6 months of consultation with the banking sector, how to solve this dilemma of financing projects, small projects of rural electrification in very high-risk areas. And we are close to have found a solution that is based, it is called Electrify, the initiative, Electrification Finance Initiative. You will see very soon this out. It is aiming at having these 5,000 small mini-grid villages around the developing countries, based on proposals by the private sector that wants to make money, based on that proposal evaluated positively by a competent banker that decides to invest senior money on that, and whatever is the gap will be filled by the public action in terms of pushing electrification in rural areas to fight poverty. So this will be electrified. I can announce in the second part of 2015 there will be a big launch of this, and we are working on that with European development finance institutions, but also with private partners and the private sector involved in that.
Thank you very much, and with this we pass to the concluding remarks. And
there was another question, if you want to, the technical question, do you want me to answer, or?
I thought that you had...
There was another question over there,
okay,
concerning CSP.
Please, short.
Very short. CSP is very difficult to implement in those islands because CSP, you need more lands. You need a lot of lands. So I'd like to answer to you, you can predict renewable energy. More you are operating on a place, more you know the climatology of the place. I'm telling you, on the system we have, we pay penalties if we don't respect the production. So it's base load. Why? Because we know the meteo forecast, and it's a combination of the model of the meteo forecast, and we take the risk to produce a quantity of energy, and we don't want to pay penalties. So I'm telling you, it's more and more predictable because we have better knowledge of wind, solar, and thanks to the storage solutions, we are producing on a baseload system now. So this is existing. So what I was saying is the future already exists. Huh? Just inspire the people and copy us, and that's what we want. We want to be copied and inspire the people all over the world.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will ask Paul Verhoef from DG RTD, in charge of renewable energy technologies, DG Research and Innovation from European Commission. He's going to summarize and conclude the conference. Thank you very much.
Good evening, I think it is. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard about the EU's political and policy approach to renewable energy, and particularly in the context of climate change. You've heard about the industrial objectives of some of our leading companies. You've heard some of the stories, very good stories, about renewables in third countries and the assistance that the EU is giving. In this, you've heard about commitments, political and industrially, about close interplay between policy, industrial developments, success in the market, the need for a longer-term vision and approach. You've seen some figures about what has been successful. In these concluding remarks, let me attempt to give you some insight in some of the experience so far and look a bit at the future. You've heard this afternoon, until there is about 30% of renewables in the system, it is doable. Beyond that, we think it's going to be a bit more complicated. So let's have a look at that. So obviously, the EU's fundamental belief in a global future is based on renewable energy, and this belief is very strong, it is unwavering, and it is well known. This belief is, of course, based on considerations of climate change, on the need to reduce CO2 and other emissions. It is based on some considerations of the remaining fossil fuel reserves, but my estimate is it is unrelated to fossil fuel prices. The latter may obviously have an influence on the speed by which the transition can take place, but they do not take away the need for a fundamental shift away from fossil fuels. The fact that we have these fossil fuels, doesn't mean that we should just deplete the resources. On the contrary, the latest scientific work seems to suggest that the majority of the remaining resources would need to stay where they are in order to have a chance of limiting temperature change to 2 degrees. If we look at this, apart from less energy, CO2 reduction in the energy sector is about, indeed, the replacement, as you've heard, of current technologies by CO2-free or, at least for a while, less CO2 technologies. It is about research and innovation on these technologies, as well as research on the associated economic and social consequences of the huge investments in new technologies. In the EU, we do this cooperatively between the Commission, the Member States, industry, research institutions and universities in something we call the Strategic Energy Technologies Plan. For many years, we have collectively invested in research and innovation, but admittedly, mostly focused on technologies themselves until now. At this point in time, we are starting to give much higher priority to system integration issues as well as to other non-technological issues. That said, the introduction of renewable energy is a complex matter, and you have seen some of this coming through in the presentations this afternoon. And it goes way beyond the technology availability as such, and we've had our fair share of experience in that. First of all, the introduction of renewable changes the dynamics of the entire energy system. Not only that it has a knock-on effect on the rest of the system as a result of the intermittent nature of renewables, but it also changes the system itself. In addition, it offers at the moment an opportunity for much more local generation, and I think Claude's little film was illustrative of that, including at the level of households, and thereby challenges the entire economic repartition and traditional business roles within the sector. So one could say renewables are spearheading the modernization of the energy sector. This modernization requires a view on the future energy system, a system that at some point soon, hopefully, will be functioning entirely on the basis of renewable energy. It needs technologies, it needs economically sustainable supply lines, it needs to allow new players in the market to generate and sell energy and energy services, and it needs a new market design to allow new businesses to flourish. It needs appropriate regulation, it needs an overarching policy. In one word, it needs a system-level approach, system-level in the technical, economic, and political sense. So we have some good, let me say some less good, maybe let's call it interesting experiences. So the good ones of these experiences have indeed led to the current penetration of renewable energy in our market. It is far higher and quicker than we ever expected. As you've seen from Jake's presentation, we are by and large over and above our political targets. It's given rise to an optimism that this is the good way forward. And although there was originally the thinking that we should at least make some headway with renewables, I think the current belief is increasingly that we should be able to get to a renewables-only energy system within a reasonable time frame. And in the EU, we have set a political target for a largely decarbonized economy by the year 2050. Some of our member states, however, are already now concretely targeting a 100% renewables-only based economy by 2050. So what are then these interesting experiences? I think first of all, we have underestimated the effects of renewables on the entire system along 3 dimensions. So the first dimension, we have focused very much on technologies and economics within each of the renewables technology sectors, and not necessarily sufficient at the technical and economic interaction at system level. And in doing so, we may not have yet drawn all the right conclusions. For example, there is concern that solar electricity is not functioning at large scale, as the capacity will be dumped on the market at the very instance that the sun starts shining. Sure. But what about connecting it to storage, as we've just heard, to heat, to other parts of the energy system? What about changing the interaction between the technological opportunities and the economic realities more? Second dimension, It is now obvious that there is a need to ensure that energy is also transported from the place of generation to the place of use. This may be obvious, but in Europe this hasn't necessarily happened until recently, and it requires massive investments in transmission capacity. So this is not only a national issue, but it clearly has a European dimension, because most of the solar energy is generated in the south, not exclusively, but the most of it is. Wind energy in the northwest, and the potential for biomass based energy is best in the north and eastern Europe. And obviously, if we would connect all of that up, we would have a good way forward. The third dimension, you've heard that already, very local generation in small installations and by small entities. It has a profound effect on the economical and technical design of the system. So we need a system that facilitates and integrates local, communal, and very large generation. And this is new. Let me get back to the experiences then. The second experience, the consequences and the complexities of feed-in tariffs with the introduction of the new technologies. I think we underestimated this. If such tariffs are not designed properly, there may not necessarily be the desired effect. We have seen tariffs that were possibly too high, and this created markets that could not be satisfied with European supplies. But there were also volumes of support that were not capped, and thus a number of public authorities got into budget problems. We've seen, and this was mentioned, seen some measures with retroactive effects of feed-in tariffs that ruined markets and stopped investments overnight. So this is not to say that feed-in tariffs are not good. On the contrary, it could provide some very well-needed revenue stability and therefore investment security. It only suggests, these experiences, that the tariffs need to be very well designed. So the third experience, and maybe the most valuable one, the predictability and long-term stability of the regulation as it is core to stimulate investments. Much of the technology in the sector is expensive. It is installed for 20 to 40 years. It requires long-time loans, and the payback of these loans is only credible there where the regulation allows for reasonable guarantees of longer-term revenues. And it's fair to say that we have not been able yet to fully ensure this. And so we are facing some significant investment barriers, both in new technologies but also in the older parts of the energy system as a result of the uncertainties of the roles that these parts will play in the future. So investment stability is a very important element, and all actions we undertake must be taken from a perspective of ensuring longer-term stability for investments. And I think that this is probably the single biggest challenge for the years to come. Policies. And the consumer is crucial in adopting the technologies, in being energy efficient, in steering demand response, and in behaving responsibly. And, of course, in underpinning the political directions. So here are another couple of things we have seen, which I wouldn't qualify as good or bad, but they relate to the following things. Number one, the energy market is subject to considerable intervention. Such intervention is, of course, required in order to reduce CO2 emissions, as we have not been able to fully internalize the cost thereof. It also makes, however, that the energy market is not fully acting in accordance with normal market behavior. And of course, this requires a prudent approach, and we cannot rely on standard regulatory approaches only. Secondly, the difficulties associated by changing the economic model and market design we see has a result in some reticence, if not outright opposition of established players. So this needs a strong political vision and hand to overcome. Thirdly, there is a strong need to target cost reductions of technology in their use. In effect, renewables are competing with very mature fossil fuel technologies, which are very well down the learning curve, used in high volumes and available at low marginal cost. So with the increased use of renewables, we can actually expect fossil fuel prices to come down, at least if the production rates are maintained. And this, of course, puts extra downward pressure on the development of renewables. So on the one hand, we need cost reduction as a target of research of innovation, as it needs to be a result of economies of scale. On the other hand, there is the question what to do with fossil fuel prices in the market in order to avoid that they undercut renewable investments in an unacceptable fashion. Again, the underlying notion is investments. I would like to mention the issue of de-risking the technology, with the exception, having the success, let me put it that way, of onshore wind and PV. There remains a substantial amount of risks at the highest technology readiness levels in much of the technology in the renewable sector. The commercial banks are not willing to finance this. Technology providers are not necessarily willing or able to accept all those risks. So we see an increasing need for the public sector, at least an expectation that the public sector will underpin these last remaining risks before deployment is actually feasible. So we will start a pilot with the European Investment Bank soon in order to do that and go well over the risk levels that normally also the bank would take. Last issue maybe to mention is the co-ownership of the system-level challenges by the players. We do not have that yet. Most players are in the game for their own commercial interest, and there is nothing wrong with that. But the only ones who seem to really tackle the system-level issues are governments. And I think that this ought to be an issue. So we need to have some system-level coalition of forward-looking interest by the players in order to move forward. So all of the above are important experiences which are helping us to shape our response for the next phase. And you have heard it a couple of times. This phase can be characterized by a political will which was worded by Commission President Juncker as his endeavor for Europe to become the global #1 in renewables. We are underway. We have established many partnerships between the public authorities and the private and research sectors. We have a strong body of regulation that is revised when and where needed. We have a shared political view that makes matters progress. We have strong industrial developments, and we have a very high level of public support. In addition, we have embarked on international partnerships and cooperation, both bilaterally and multilaterally. We're supporting IRENA, we work with IEA, the World Bank, the UN organizations, and we use our bilateral energy policy dialogues and science and technology agreements to share our experience, to assist others, and to learn from them. So our message to all of you today is that Europe is very happy to share its experience and cooperate internationally. The EU institutions, represented here today by representatives from the Council, from the Parliament, from the Commission, our member states individually, and our industry and research institutes, very much welcome the broad coalition and cooperation and international engagement on renewable energy. As we've heard this afternoon, renewable energy is not only a technology issue. It is an economic issue, it is a societal issue, it is a regulatory and a political issue. We believe in renewable energy, and we have a clear determination to make it work. So on behalf of all of us, but in particular of Commissioner Cañete, Member of Parliament Claude Turmes, the Latvian Presidency, Director General Dominique Ristori, and our moderator Maria Graça Carvalho, and other old colleagues here, we would like to thank you for your participation, and we look forward to continue our discussions with you. Thank you very much.